one thing stronger than all the armies in the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. These are the words of the great French writer Victor Hugo, and they are truly prophetic. Time after time throughout all of recorded history, it has been the power of the idea that has triumphed. And on August 14, 1935, Social Security became an idea whose time had finally come. Hi, I'm Roger Peterson, and welcome to the evolution of Social Security. Today we'll be looking at the history of Social Security, why Social Security became necessary, and how Social Security continues to be a fixture in all of our lives. The concept of social insurance was not a new one in 1935 when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law. In fact, the concept for social insurance was first proposed by Revolutionary War hero and author Thomas Paine. In the winter of 1795, Paine wrote Agrarian Justice. In this pamphlet, Paine called for the creation of a national fund to which all landowners would contribute 10 pounds sterling per annum during life to every person who was 50 years old or older, so that they could live well in old age and go out decently.
We as a nation must have the resolve to establish a national fund that will take care of men once they are 50 years of age and too old to work on the farm. This will enable our older men who have served this nation well to live a decent life in old age. Thomas Paine, 1795.
Thomas Paine had proposed a revolutionary concept that would eventually be adopted by almost every industrial nation in the world: social insurance. It took nearly 100 years before any nation would consider the merits of a social insurance system. But when the Industrial Revolution took hold in Europe during the mid-1800s, the idea of social insurance was no longer considered far-fetched. In 1881, Otto von Bismarck of Germany proposed the Prussian Plan, which made Germany the first nation in the world to provide social insurance to older people and disabled workers. The Prussian Plan was the forerunner to modern Social Security, and it firmly established the age of 65 as the official age of retirement. Meanwhile, in America, the Industrial Revolution didn't take full swing until the late 1870s and early 1880s, in large part because of the Civil War. America's economy was still based primarily on agriculture. When people got old, they lived with their children or family members. Most of them devoted their lives to helping raise their grandchildren, doing chores, and living the rest of their lives in dignity. In the early 1900s, older people were becoming increasingly more visible in public because of advances in science and medicine. Older people were able to live longer and were healthier. But this created a problem for many older Americans because many of the young people were taking factory jobs in cities and leaving the family farms for good. Without the family to support them, many elderly persons were forced to get help from charities and religious groups. After World War I, the Roaring '20s was a time of tremendous prosperity for most Americans. But the stock market crash on Monday, October 29, 1929, instantly created the Great Depression. Banks were failing. Thousands became bankrupt and homeless overnight. Many people committed suicide by jumping from windows. Unemployment skyrocketed, and many people had to wait in relief lines and go to soup kitchens just to survive. The charities and religious groups could no longer meet the demands of older people, or anyone else for that matter. The desperate times demanded that drastic measures be taken. Despite the fact that social insurance measures had failed on several previous attempts in Congress, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt decided to take definitive action.
a hope of many years' standing is in large part fulfilled. The civilization of the past 100 years, with its startling industrial changes, has tended more and more to make life insecure. Young people have come to wonder what would be their lot when they came to old age. The man with a job has wondered how long the job would last. This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 millions of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health. We can never insure 100% of the population against 100% of the hazards and vicissitudes of life, but we have tried to frame a law which will give some measure of protection to the average citizen and to his family against the loss of a job and against poverty-stricken old age. It seems to me that if the Senate and the House of Representatives in this long and arduous session had done nothing more than pass this security bill, Social Security Act, the session would be regarded as historic for all time.
It was no accident the new law was called the Social Security Act. Roosevelt wanted to assure older Americans that their benefits would be safe, guaranteed, and protected. The Social Security card is a symbol of the guarantee that all Americans, especially the elderly and disabled, would have a safety net of benefits that would always be protected as an income supplement. This sacred trust has never been broken in 60 years. This is the original Social Security headquarters in Baltimore, the Candler Building. This is where the first card was printed and issued by lot to John David Sweeney, Jr. of New Rochelle, New York in 1936. Ida Mae Fuller was the first person to receive a Social Security check in 1940. One of the most interesting things about Social Security has been every president since Roosevelt has zealously worked to make sure that the agency's commitment to the elderly and people with disabilities has never ceased. During the 1950s, presidents continued the legacy of Roosevelt. In the early 50s, President Truman signed the 1950s amendments to the Social Security Act. He suggested health care for the elderly, but that would not be passed until the mid-1960s. In 1956, President Eisenhower amended the Social Security Act by signing the disability program into law shortly after the Korean War. And during the 1960s, President Johnson signed Medicare into law to address the problem of adequate health care for the elderly.
To the Harry Truman Library in Independence, Missouri, comes a delegation from Washington headed by President and Mrs. Johnson and Vice President Humphrey. 31 members of Congress make up the rest of the party, which came here for a ceremonial signing of the just-passed bill for medical care of the aged. Mr. Johnson decided to sign the bill in the presence of former President and Mrs. Truman, for it was Mr. Truman who first suggested Medicare as far back as 1945, the year he took office. Mr. Johnson signs into law the bill that expands the scope of Social Security, guaranteeing hospital care, medical care, nursing home and outpatient care for those over 65. The several pens used in affixing the presidential signature are to be distributed among those who expedited passage of the bill and who came here to honor Mr. Truman.
They told me, President Truman, that if you wish to get the voluntary medical insurance, that you'll have to sign this application form. And they asked me to sign as your witness. So you're getting special treatment since cards won't go out to the other folks until the end of this month. But we wanted you to know, and we wanted the entire world to know, that we haven't forgotten who is the real daddy of Medicare.
And when the Social Security trust funds appeared to be in danger, President Ronald Reagan and the Congress worked together to quickly pass the 1983 amendments to the Social Security Act.
This bill demonstrates for all time our nation's ironclad commitment to Social Security. It assures the elderly that America will always keep the promises made in troubled times a half a century ago. It assures those who are still working that they too have a pact with the future. From this day forward, they have our pledge that they will get their fair share of benefits when they retire. And this bill assures us of one more thing that is equally important. It's a clear and dramatic demonstration that our system can still work when men and women of goodwill join together to make it work.
In 1994, the evolution of Social Security continued when President Bill Clinton used this pen, the same pen President Roosevelt used to sign the Social Security Act of 1935, to sign this bill into law that made Social Security an independent agency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When Franklin Roosevelt made a speech to the New York legislature in 1931, he said this: "The success or failure of any government must be measured by the well-being of its citizens." That was the goal that moved him 59 years ago yesterday. On that day, in a ceremony in the cabinet room just behind us, he signed the Social Security Act into law, and that is what guides us today. With an independent Social Security Administration, we are reinventing our government to streamline our operations so that we can serve the American people better. We are strengthening those things which Social Security ought to do and taking precautions to make sure it does not do things which it ought not to do. It is proving that government can still work to improve people's lives. And now Social Security, we know, will work even better.
Evolve, to unfold, to develop, the ability to change or adapt. Social Security has evolved considerably since 1936, when the post office had to deliver and collect the first Social Security applications. So far we've talked about the past, but now let's go to our studio so we can talk about the present and the future of Social Security. Today, Social Security is America's program. Virtually all workers, 141 million people, contribute to the system through payroll deductions or quarterly tax payments. And more than 40 million people receive Social Security benefits. Social Security provides each of us with a unique package of benefits. Retirement benefits when you retire, disability benefits in the event you become disabled, and survivor's benefits to your family if you should die before retiring. Additionally, your tax dollars provide you with Medicare health insurance when you retire or should you become disabled. The Social Security Administration also manages the Supplemental Security Income Program, SSI, to 5 million disabled and elderly people. What many people don't know is that SSI is based on financial need. By law, SSI is funded only by general revenues. What that means to you and me is that our Social Security contributions don't pay for SSI. They only pay for Social Security retirement, disability, and survivor's benefits, and nothing else. Despite these facts, there are still some misunderstandings and legitimate questions about the present condition and the future of Social Security. We need Social Security because it works. Before we move forward, it's important to remember that Social Security began to a large extent because of the poverty that many elderly Americans faced during the Great Depression. Before Social Security, there wasn't a safety net to protect you if you had no savings or family members to support you. Simply put, you were in dire straits. Even people with savings and investments lost money during the Depression. If you really want to see the positive impact that Social Security has had on the elderly, take a look at these figures. When Social Security began in 1935, most of the elderly lived in poverty. By 1959, only 35% of the elderly lived in poverty. And by 1992, only 13% of the elderly lived in poverty. And while this has been a good development, we shouldn't conclude that elderly Social Security beneficiaries are all living high on the hog. In fact, the average Social Security retiree only has a total annual household income of less than $25,000. As you've seen, Social Security prevents poverty among the elderly and provides them with a safety net. We need Social Security because it works. One of the biggest misconceptions in America is that Social Security is just for older people. As a matter of fact, of the 42 million people receiving benefits, 10 million are adults with disabilities, and 3 million are children. That means that close to 1/3 of the beneficiaries aren't retirees. This is why it's important to remember that Social Security provides disability benefits for you and your family, as well as survivor's benefits for your family in case you die. Many young people don't think much about sustaining a serious injury or death, but it's a real possibility for everyone. Studies show that 1 out of 4 young workers will become disabled at some time during his or her lifetime. And about 200,000 Americans die between the ages of 18 and 44 each year. Additionally, only 1 in 4 workers has long-term disability insurance provided by their employer. While most workers have life insurance policies, the average value of a group policy is less than $50,000, and the average value of an individual policy is less than $40,000. Guaranteed benefits in the event you're unable to work. Guaranteed benefits for your family if you should die. And guaranteed retirement benefits when you're ready to stop working. Social Security isn't just for the elderly. It's for you, it's for me, it's for our children. Social Security is for every worker. Social Security was designed to be only one part of your retirement plan. It was never intended to be your sole source of retirement income. To paraphrase President Franklin Roosevelt's earlier remarks, no one can protect everyone from all the vicissitudes of life. Social Security is merely a safety net created to supplement your savings, investments, and pension plan. To further assist all Americans in their retirement planning, Social Security has started mailing personal earnings and benefit estimate statements to all workers age 60 and older every year. And by the year 2000, all workers age 25 and older will automatically receive these statements every year. This statement provides you with detailed financial information about your estimated retirement, disability, and survivor's benefit amounts. Armed with this information, you'll have a better idea of how much money to save and invest for the future. Retirement planning is important because of the 29 million Social Security retirees. 63% rely heavily on Social Security for more than half of their income. 26% rely on it for more than 90% of their income, and 14%, or roughly 5 million people, rely on Social Security for all of their income. So remember, Social Security is only part of your retirement plan. The rest depends on you. Social Security is insurance, social insurance. This has always been the philosophy of the program since its inception. And like insurance, Social Security provides partial income replacement due to death, disability, or retirement. Because it's social insurance, it provides benefits individually to each of us, as well as to our society as a whole. Social Security isn't a pension, and it's not welfare either. As a worker, you're entitled to Social Security benefits because it's your right. You earn them. You earn these benefits every time you pay taxes. Equity is also provided because benefit amounts are based on your earnings and the Social Security taxes you paid. The more taxes you paid, the higher your benefits are. Social Security's benefit formula is weighted to provide for social adequacy. What's meant by social adequacy is that those with higher earnings will have higher benefit amounts because they pay higher taxes. But as a percentage of their pre-retirement income, the money they made when they were working, their benefits will be lower than that paid to an average or low-wage earner. As you can see in this example, a higher earner will get retirement benefits that equal about 25% of his or her pre-retirement income, while the percentage for an average worker is higher. And you'll notice that the percentage is even higher for a low-wage earner. Social adequacy is an important philosophical component of Social Security because it helps to raise the standard of living for low-wage earners, and it offers workers some financial protection for their families. Now, it's undeniably true that some people, if given the opportunity to take their contributions out of the Social Security program, could earn higher returns on their investments than they will get from Social Security. But consider the alternative. What would happen to the millions of people who lost money on their investments? And what kind of a burden would be placed on taxpayers if the welfare rolls dramatically increased to support the many people whose private investments failed? The Depression of the 1930s gave us a grim example of what could happen. More than anything, the Social Security Administration is striving to deliver world-class service. The agency has 1,300 field offices nationwide to provide face-to-face customer service and 132 hearing offices to ensure that all customers are afforded their right to due process when they conduct business with SSA. There are also 54 disability offices to handle disability claims and 7 processing centers to ensure payment accuracy. Additionally, SSA provides an 800-number telephone network to provide customers with general information and customer assistance. The Social Security Administration also provides service to workers living overseas. To put this all in proper perspective, SSA handles 57 million calls to the 800 number every year, serves more than 24 million people annually at its field offices, maintains the lifetime earnings records for all workers, and handles more than 222 million earnings reports from the nation's employers. Additionally, the agency receives more than 7 million applications for benefits annually, 1.5 million appeals, and processes 90 million changes each year, and most are done on the spot. SSA also provides free publications on all its programs, which can be picked up at any field office or ordered by phone simply by calling 1-800-772-1213. Now, all of these services are made possible by the 7.65% payroll contributions made by the workers and the 7.65% matching payroll contributions made by their employers. These contributions enable the agency to adhere to its long-held motto of getting the right check to the right person at the right time. And what most people don't know is that SSA comes pretty close to this adage with an overall payment accuracy rate of 98%. And this figure goes up to 99% if you only include the retirement, survivors, and disability programs. But more importantly, as taxpayers, you get all of this for administrative costs of 1.6% of SSA's budget. If you compare these administrative costs with those of any charity you've contributed to, you'll find you're getting real value for your money. As you've seen, Social Security has constantly evolved to meet the needs of the nation. The one thing that every president and every Congress has agreed on since 1935 is that Social Security is a sacred trust that must be preserved. At the present time, the trust funds are solvent and they're safe. All money not used to pay benefits and administrative costs is invested in U.S. Treasury bonds, which are guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. It's important to note that Social Security earns interest on these Treasury bonds. Take 1993 as an example. In 93, the trust funds earned $28 billion in interest. Despite these encouraging numbers, the fact remains that some changes will have to be made to the Social Security system within the next 20 years so that the system can support the baby boomers, those born between the early 1940s and the early 1960s, who comprise the largest segment of the U.S. population. The impact of Social Security is staggering. It's an integral part of the nation's economy. Not only do more than 40 million people rely on their benefits to make ends meet, but many businesses rely heavily on Social Security each month. Whether it's the local mall, the area supermarket, or the local bank, all of these service providers count on Social Security beneficiaries to support their businesses. In fact, Social Security is 5% of the nation's gross domestic product and makes up 24% of the federal budget. Confidence, trust, and service. Recent surveys show that 80% of Americans agree that Social Security is a government program which provides useful monetary benefits. 77% are satisfied with the agency's performance, and 73% oppose any cutback in spending on the program. But this information doesn't mean that changes won't be needed to improve the program. Currently, the agency is changing to better serve the public by improving its customer service, by making the disability program more simple, and by constantly upgrading its technology and responding to customer input. Change isn't a bad thing or something to be feared. Changes have been made to the Social Security programs in every decade since 1935. Without a doubt, changes must be made in the future to preserve Social Security, and the agency is working hard to prepare for the 21st century. But there is a more important reason why Social Security has been successful for so long, a moral one. None of us ever wants to go back to the days of the Depression when there was no safety net for the elderly and the disabled. Arthur J. Altmeyer, the first commissioner of Social Security, probably put it best when he said, "Social Security will always be a goal, never a finished thing, because aspirations are infinitely expandable, just as human nature is infinitely perfectible." So when you really think about it, Social Security is an idea that has passed the test of time. For the evolution of Social Security, I'm Roger Peterson. Thanks for watching.